So you make seriously fabulous
Yeah,
lighting sculptures.
yeah. It's sometimes they're very large, sometimes they're a little bit smaller. It very much depends on the project and the interior designer that we're working with. But the ones that we probably enjoy the most are the very large lobby entrance and staircase features for sure.
Hi there, I'm Matt Stahl, and welcome to the Super Prime Property Show, where we discuss the world of super prime real estate by talking with leading designers, architects, developers, and agents. This podcast aims to explore the intricacies of the industry, delving into conversations that hopefully inspire, inform, and entertain. Before we get started, please could I ask a favour? If you're not already, could you hit the subscribe button and give us a follow? You can find us on Instagram at Super Prime Property Show. Thank you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So you're both the co-founders of Rock Soar.
Yes, that's right. Alison Smith and myself.
Okay, what is Rock Soar?
Do you want to take that one, Ali?
Rock Soar is a sculptural lighting company. We founded it in 2022, didn't
Yes.
we? And it's basically just the two of us. We have two avenues of the business. One is our bespoke installations that we do, and then the other side is collections, which are like set product ranges. And we use lots of different types of materials. I am biased towards glass, so you can kind of see that in the work that we do. But we have a cast acrylic one, don't we? And we're hoping to do some ceramics as well in the future.
We work mainly with like interior designers and architects around sort of like private residentials, but also some commercial projects and hospitality.
Yeah, so you make seriously fabulous
Yeah,
lighting sculptures.
yeah. It's sometimes they're very large, sometimes they're a little bit smaller. It very much depends on the project and the interior designer that we're working with. But the ones that we probably enjoy the most are the very large lobby entrance and staircase features for sure.
And how much would one of them cost me?
I would say we're very competitively priced. It very much depends. It depends on whether we are suspending direct to the ceiling or whether we need to create a bespoke ceiling plate. So there's a lot of technical information that goes into it in order to price something up. But if we were looking at something, let's say around the 10-meter drop with a very well designed ceiling plate, probably sort of in the 40,000-50,000 pound mark. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you only have to look at your Instagram to get an idea about the stuff that you guys do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's seriously impressive. So we'll get back onto that in a bit. Let's just talk about your backgrounds.
Okay.
How'd you guys meet, or how did it all get started?
We met probably now 5 or 6 years ago. We worked together in a previous company. So Alison at the time was a design manager. She was managing the design team. And I was sort of head of sales. Doing very similar things to what we are doing now in terms of designing bespoke lighting features. But sort of 3 years ago, we decided that it was probably time for us to join forces and embark in this adventure.
Yeah.
You always tell me the story about how I think we were just chatting one day. I was like, should we start our own business one day? Do you reckon that'd be a good idea?
Were you drinking? Was you out for wine?
There were a few times where alcohol was involved, but I always say this to her, and I say it to anyone that asks, family and friends. I don't think I would have done this if it wasn't for Alison. A lot of my friends who know me for a while will say, "Well, Mons, you've always wanted to have a business." Yeah, I just didn't know what it was going to look like. I really had no clue. And then I think when I joined the company. That I did a couple of years ago, I think it was the first time in my career that I was like, I actually enjoy this. I enjoy what I'm doing. I enjoy the product. I enjoy the people that I work with. I enjoy the industry. And then some point, I kind of got to a stage where I used to have thoughts of like, what if I was doing this for myself? Or there were things within the company that maybe I didn't really identify myself with. And I used to think, well, I'm not going to stop doing what I like to do just because of these things. And I had no control over these things. And what if I did? And I always say to Alison, I wouldn't do this if it wasn't for her, because she definitely was the one that would sit there every so often and she would sort of say, why are we doing this again? Why are we here again?
That's the thing when you start your own business. Maybe you can envision the business and all that, and your ideas, and you can't envision the partner.
Yeah.
If your business needs a partner, and we discussed like my business as well, like
Yeah.
you need that other, like, especially with YouTube, the complementing skills, to
Yeah.
with you running the business side, and with Alison on the design side.
Yeah, I think when we were chatting about it, because I know some level of sales and business development, but it's not what I studied, and I am the creative person. And if I wanted to envision having a career where I could draw and paint and make, but I didn't think that being able to do all the rest of it would mean, I don't know, I think it would be completely too much for one person. So obviously meeting Monica and her ideas and how we both had the same passions, it was like, sounds like a good fit.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like I can't do what she does and she can't do what I do. And I think it works quite well. And we have a lot of maker friends in the industry, and we see, they're by themselves and they're running their own businesses and their own studios. And you can see where they're missing
Yeah,
that element of someone who can do the business development, who can look for new business opportunities and just keep sort of that growth going.
hard to just
Um,
be creative one day and then be business development the next
you just
day.
can't,
Like, it doesn't
no.
work that
And
way.
also being creative isn't just something that you turn on. Like it needs, you need your time. You need to be surrounded by the right elements of the same nature, for example, if that is something that inspires you, which a lot of our work is around nature, and it takes a lot of focus time. I mean, most of the work that we start off with, Alison starts off with a sketch and then she does watercolor paintings. There's hours that goes into that. While she's doing that, I need to be making sure that, the other side of the business is also functioning, because otherwise it would just be at a stop while the creative side is happening. And I think that's why we work quite well together.
So it was just after COVID, right? 2020, 2022.
Mm-hmm.
What was the biggest single challenge getting it off the ground?
The money.
Yeah.
Well,
Having the financial investment.
let's get into that, because you didn't actually, very interestingly, we spoke, you didn't have necessarily seed investors. You guys
Yeah.
went via the Princess Trust.
Yeah. So we at the time, I mean, there wasn't much of a choice. It was, we would have to fund it ourselves, or in essence, try and apply for a business loan. And in essence, that's what we did. We decided to sign up to the Princess Trust charity, which they were very helpful in guiding us in terms of getting together a business plan, which obviously we knew we were going to need regardless, even if we were going to apply for a business startup loan. But it was good to just have the support regardless. And so we did the course with them, which is just in essence kind of making sure that we understand what it means to start up a business, and all the sort of financial management paperwork that needs to be done. And then they helped us through the British Bank startup loan to make sure that we could obviously obtain the funding that we wanted. If that had fallen through, then it would have just been out of our pocket in
Yeah.
essence, which I think the growth that we've achieved so far and everything that we have done, although everyone around us is like, guys, you've done so much, that side was very much dependent on the financial
Sure.
resources.
Is it like an approval process that you have to go through with the Princess Trust? Do you have to be accepted? Do you just...
Not really. So it's basically a program that helps 18 to 30-year-olds, isn't it? Be able to start up businesses. So you get people from like all levels of education coming up and saying that I want to start in like hairdressing, or I want to be an artist, or I want to, I don't know, work in electronics or something like that. So you basically will do lots of workshops with the Princess Trust, and it will be marketing, finance, business plans, everything. So that was really helpful. And then I don't know if it ends up narrowing down to a few people who will then get the British Bank application and then move forward with that. A lot of people probably drop off as well, because it is quite overwhelming, the amount of information that you're given. So if you come to the Princess Trust with a very small idea and you haven't really thought it through, it's probably not the best time to go there. I think you need a bit more of an established understanding of what you want to do out of it.
When it comes to the stage of actually applying for funding, what has happened is they've forced you to sit down and think about the business in various different perspectives, not just this this beautiful idea that you have, but also how is it really going to work, and everything that's involved in it. And then when you apply for the funding, we were applying for quite a large amount. I don't think they had ever sort of approved such a large amount until that point. And I think that's probably where you could get accepted, you could be rejected.
Okay.
But up until then, in terms of sort of like the support and I guess the information and knowledge that they provide you, it's open to everyone. It's just whether you really are ready for the challenge.
Okay. And did you, for the funding that you got, where did what was the biggest chunk going to? I mean, was it just to survive and pay yourself so you could keep going? Was it for materials? Was it for
It was product development
it was product
completely. Yeah,
development?
we did not pay ourselves for a very long time until we felt okay, we're ready. This is the right time. We held out just to really focus on building up the brand, building up the company. So much so our business mentor at the time was like, "How are you ladies surviving?" And it's like, "It's fine. We've got this." It's just, a small sacrifice we need to do for a little while. And then once we won our first project, then we were like, okay, I think maybe we're ready to consider. And it kind of just started off at a very small amount. And then another project came in, and then another project came in, and then eventually it was like, okay, I think we can afford to actually live like normal humans.
Yeah.
So what was your first project?
The first project was a private residence in sort of the Marylebone area with Helen Green Design.
Okay.
We were very blessed because we'd worked with them so many times previously in our other companies. So, in fact, I think Joe was the first person I called and said, "I'm starting up my own company." And
Great. 100% hit rate then
yeah,
from
literally. And immediately she said, "Let me know as soon as you're up and running, and we will help." And that was the beginning.
All right. We worked together on that project in Marylebone.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. I can remember the difficulties we had getting those
Yeah. It's always quite interesting when you're working with like prime listed buildings because there's so many restrictions when it comes to suspending or even drilling, etc. And when we're doing bespoke decorative lights, one of the things that we also incorporate a lot with our designs is we try and make them functional. So for prime listed buildings, it's great because most of the time there is no architectural lighting. There is just the wall lights and the floor lamps and the table lamps. And so when we then get asked to design what they want to be sort of a grand bespoke feature, hanging from one suspension point with one electrical cable, you then also think, okay, well, how am I going to make this work so that it does provide the right illumination that it requires?
I think that's a good example because if you look at, mass produced items versus what you guys are doing, it's not just bespoke. It's like it not only does it have to be to the design intent of the client or whatever this come about, but not also it has to the functionality has to be there to illuminate the room correctly and work with the electronics. And third, it has to be installed in pretty difficult conditions. You might have like in that one very very ornate listed ceiling, for example, fitting within an existing ceiling rows. That stuff is not easy.
And there was a hook already in there that was like getting in the way. I mean, your guys were very great on that day. I think Washsex saved our lives on that evening.
He does that.
Yeah. So it is great to work. I mean, obviously the interior designers, we've got a really close relationship with them when we're designing these things, but it's also really good to have that relationship with the contractors on site where it's sort of hands-on, we're here to problem solve, and we're not leaving until we find a way to solve this.
I think no matter how many sign-off documents or information that you relay back to it, when you get on site, there's always something where you're like, this isn't going to work or what. So you just need people to work around you, work with you to be able to get it sorted.
The whole team was there till 9-10 o'clock at night. That big one.
Quite literally. By the end of it, I was calling her Joanna and Rachel. Like I had completely forgotten who her name was.
I was like, just call me whatever, it's fine.
I was like so delusional of like what is happening. We've been here for hours just applying. I think it was like over 300 pieces of glass onto these like framework.
Do you know what Joe said to us as well? She was like
Joe from Helen Green.
Yeah. So basically me and you were like trying to like tidy up and stuff, and she was there. I think it was only us three, maybe
Yeah.
Alex as well. And apparently you were packing the rest of the glass piece up and putting it down somewhere. And then I was coming along and I was like, oh, it doesn't go there, and putting it somewhere else. And then you were picking it up to put it back. And we were not clocking what each other were doing. And then Joe was just sat there like, yeah, I think they need to go to bed.
Yeah, that does
But
happen.
that's what it takes, right? You know, and your
Yeah.
client moved in like a day or two later
Yeah.
and loved it, you know,
And
and
it's-
absolutely
Yeah.
loved it. And
Honestly.
this is what you have to do.
Yeah, and it's been like that with every single project that we've done so far in that building.
And
It's
you
like,
always vow it
go.
won't be like that, but it always ends up being that way.
Yeah.
It is. And I think you over time you do grow, like you sort of grow a tolerance or like an immune system to it, where before, when you first sort of work in this industry, you panic when these things happen on site. You're like, oh my God. We're almost just like, yeah, just more of the same. And it's like, it doesn't matter. There's an issue. There's always an issue. There'll always be an
Yeah.
issue. It's more about like, how do we tackle it and what's the solution? And I was actually saying that today to our business mentor this morning. Like, we have a really good relationship in a sense where I've done some serious messed up mistakes in the past where it's cost us a lot of money, and, you know, vice versa. But we just don't hold that over each other's heads.
Yeah.
Like, we're just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
it happened. Let's, you know, how are
Yeah.
we gonna move past this and make sure that it doesn't happen again? Because honestly, working with like these projects where there's so much that goes into bespoke, there's
Yeah.
so much that goes into not just our side, but like preparing the ceiling, the contractors, installers. There's so many different teams that it's not gonna go, you know, as planned.
And you
but-
guys are always last on site as well,
Mhm.
which
Yeah.
always, of course, is right up to the last minute. So you got all
Yeah.
that pressure coming in.
Yeah.
you
Yeah, it can be
know.
really
And you probably have
difficult.
been ready 2 months before, but
Yeah, there are
Yeah.
times that we've had things ready, and then, you know, the floor needs to go in first and everything else needs to, and then we're sort of the last one. Sometimes the joinery needs to go in
oh,
first.
yeah, and be totally dust free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are times that the joinery is still happening and they're telling us to go in because literally the client moves in 2 days. So you're sort of like ducking ladders and humans, and while you have bits of glass hanging down, but
Yeah.
it could, you know, it's
Yeah.
chaotic.
We all know it. What I love about your pieces is that they're they're a real example of true craftsmanship.
Mm.
You know, something that it feels something that's rarer to come by each and every time. The more the more projects you do, and the different artisans that you work with around the UK. You know, sometimes it's always such a pleasure to see how people produce these artworks.
Yeah.
You know, I'd love to hear what let's say you get the design done. What happens, or maybe right from the brief that you get from the client.
Yeah, that can differ. So sometimes we have interior designers who know exactly what they want in terms of material or like the framework. So we end up kind of building a narrative based on that, zhuzhing it up to make it kind of feasible in terms of like technicality and structurally. And then we'll take the elements to our like product engineers or our glass blowers or acrylic manufacturers, and we'll be like, can you make this? And that's at the point where they're like, absolutely not, or like, what are you thinking? Or they're probably like, yes, we can, but this might have to change ever so slightly. And then we do a range of like testing sessions as well, so that's kind of included in our price. We'll do like a range of samples and then present them to the client, and then they get to select what it is. There's the other side of it where someone might be like, I have a lobby entrance space and I have no idea what I want, but I want it to be sparkly. And then it might be
And
that
float.
yeah. And then it might be that there's a particular tree that grows nearby or like a river that runs by, and then we can kind of draw inspiration from that. So I'll kind of sit down and do all my watercolour paintings, oceans and rivers.
So you will draw it
Yes.
in watercolor?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
will you show that to the
Yes.
that's how
yeah.
that's how you present it?
Yeah, so we do like a little proposal, and it'll have all my kind of sketches and my thought process, which hopefully they kind of understand along the way. And then, and I think they really like it, interior designers. I'm not too sure about the end client and how much they care about that element of it, but I know that the interior designers love it. We don't really have too much of a connection with the end client that often, so it might be that our sketches kind of stop there, or they might get passed on. Depends what they.
I think some of them are shown. Like, I've had clients that have said, "Can I just take the presentation, change the logo, and
Sure.
and show it to the end
Yeah.
client and make sure that's completely up to
Yeah.
you. Very much depends on if the end client is someone who is interested in the craft and the making and the process, or if they're sort of just going, deliver this to me by XYZ. And we've had like interior designers who their end client, when we were doing in the studio blowing the glass, they would ask for like pictures and mini videos of footages of what was happening, and then we would pass it on to the interior designer would pass it on to the end
Wow.
client.
Okay.
And that was quite useful, and I think it also kept the end client sort of mind at ease, because we're getting closer and closer to delivering, and they want to know that something is happening in the background.
And it's a big investment too. They want to
Yeah.
see something's happening.
Yeah, so that does work. Whether they saw the sketches in the first place, I don't know.
So once you have the sketches signed off,
Yeah.
what happens then? Where is it? Is the first stage that the glass is blown, or
Yeah, so we basically I'll do my sketches, and then we'll take it to a product engineer who basically will CAD model it up, and they'll work with me really closely, because sometimes it can be a little bit of a conflict between being really practical and then being very aesthetic and minimal and sleek. There can be a bit of a conflict between them. We'll then present that in a sign-off document to the interior designer. They'll say yes or no. And then once they are happy with all the kind of colours and glass forms that we're looking at, we then take those to our glass blowers or the manufacturer that we're working
is
with.
that in the UK?
Yeah, so the glass blowers are in Stourbridge. Not many people know that Stourbridge is basically the heart of the glass blowing industry in the UK. Glass blowers have been there for around 400 years.
Really?
And they have these huge glass cones, which are basically, they're like kind of huge chimneys, and there were 4 of them in Stourbridge. 2 of them collapsed. One of them is it's under renovation or something like that, because it's basically also falling apart. But you basically can go into these glass chimneys, and then they have like little locations where all the glass blowers used to be. They don't use them anymore. So our glass blowers are kind of adjacent to that. And we get to go up there. There's actually the International Festival of Glass that happens, I think it's every 2 years. So it's happening this August, and then I think in 2 years' time. And that's a chance to go up to Stourbridge, and they've got the glass museum. You get to see loads of demos and people's sculptures and artwork.
Do you know how to do it?
Good.
Can you blow glass? Like, is it?
So I used to be a glass blowing assistant for a very short period, and I loved it. It was absolutely amazing. But it's one of those things where you have to dedicate all of your time to it in order to be good at it. And I really like working with lots of different materials. So I'd do a bit of like glass blowing or whatever, and I'd be like, oh, I really want to do a bit of ceramics. So I'd kind of like flitter off and do that. So it's not for me, but it's definitely a fun thing. So if you ever get to do it, I would.
I think when we're doing something at school where
Really?
we like obviously slightly more basic,
Mhm.
but I remember something
hard.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Blow through the long tubes, don't
Yeah,
you?
you
Yeah.
do. Yeah, the
Yeah.
rods. It's definitely fun, but also I sometimes watch them, and our glass blower, over the years, you just see the scars of like where they've, had incidents in the studio.
Singeing their eyelashes. That's
yeah.
what we heard a lot
We
of.
hear stories of that all the time. Or their hair set on fire. One of them's gone bald over the years. It's just like the heat is too much. And and also you need to make sure that when you're in these studios, the heat is insane, that you are drinking your water and keeping hydrated, because it's honestly, it's a lot of strain on your body over some time.
That was one thing when I was a glass blowing assistant. I nearly like blacked out. I've never like experienced like something like that before. I was just working away, and they're like, you need to drink, even if you're not thirsty, you just need to drink. And obviously, like being new at it, and then like everything started going like darker and darker, and I was like, I need to get out. And then I had to literally have a bit of time out, because I was,
There you go.
it's
Risky
awful.
business.
Yeah.
I wonder how many clients realize, the history
goes
and like
through it,
goes
yeah.
into it. It's an amazing story.
Even sometimes when we've got clients asking us to like blow things to like 50 centimeter diameter or whatever it is, and in their head it's like, just blow it to the size. And you're
in a factory in China or something, they think,
yeah, I think if you work with glass blowers that are like industrial glass blowers, where they have these large facilities and the manpower, then sure. But then there's only so much that you can then do in terms of adding the element of craft to it. So like the textures, the colors, the all the different techniques, they don't always work on a larger scale. So you are kind of somewhat limited to that. And also, like what Alison said, for you to be really good at a particular style or technique of glass blowing, you need to be doing it every single day. Um, and when you're kind of working to these sizes, usually that isn't the case. So then you're also then putting your glass blower to some sort of I guess a challenge, and to kind of get the craft right, get the beauty of the material right, but then also still deliver in
Mm.
50, 60 or whatever centimeters diameter.
That was one project that we did. So one of our collections is called Storm, and it's basically a glass globe that's quite small in size, a really nice texture underneath of it. And we showed this to a client, and they were like, "Can we have it but big?" We were like, you can, but obviously we need to do like testing sessions. It means that like all of the fixings, the top hat fixings change, the suspension,
Yeah.
like the weight of it, everything changes. It's not just like, oh, just make it bigger. And I think a lot of interior designers or like our clients don't really understand like the complexity that happens when you start scaling something up so big. And also when you start getting that big, it's obviously quite difficult to manage in terms of the weight of the glass on the punty iron and making sure that it's completely central where the hole is, and then making sure that the hole doesn't warp. So there's loads and loads of things that we've kind of got to get used to with our glass blowers.
Yeah, that project is great though. They wanted originally 50 centimeter diameter, and we tested it, and it just didn't work for what it was, because it's sort of this globe, but then we add texture to the bottom of it, so that once it's paired up with light, it'll give you like these lovely projections of patterns on the nearby surfaces. And so when we started blowing it to 50 centimeter diameter, the glass just gets very thin, very thin, and in essence it collapsed on itself.
Yeah.
And that didn't work. But then it's like, okay, we can't do 50, let's do 40 and 30, and that was fine. And but then even adding color to that dimension, you're now no longer adding just a little bit of color, you need to add quite a lot of color, and then getting the saturation rate. So these globes were all like blue and orange to like represent sort of the sun, like a sun kind of piercing through like a stormy cloud. So that was exciting to make, but we had to make a few of them before we got it right.
So where's that light fitting now?
So that light has been installed in a project in a commercial building in Bank.
Okay.
We actually have all the videos and photography of it that we can share.
It's called Storm Sunsets, and it's like cascades down 6 floor levels, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Wow.
over staircase,
good one for us.
and it was great. It's great fun. But yeah, just obviously those little things that you then need to just refine. I think if we were to do it now at that scale, we're like, yeah, walk in the park. First time round though, it's
First time for everything.
Yeah.
So once you've had the glass blown, where's it assembled? How does that?
We have
in your front room?
Well,
at some
once upon a
points?
time,
Yeah.
for sure. No, we have an assembly team that we have worked with for years, even in the previous companies that
Great.
we were at. Wait, did you use them before?
No.
Just in the last company. So we've worked with them for a while. And yeah, they do everything from receiving our deliveries, checking that it's arriving in good quality and
Okay.
every single component, and then wiring it up, putting it together, and then testing it for a while just to make sure that we've checked everything from sort of weight distribution to the electrical components of it, etc.
Yeah, that's all in the UK as well. I think because we like to keep a close eye on like the progression of our projects, it's so much easier to do that by taking a visit to Stourbridge or down in Dorking where our assembly team is, or like our acrylics are up in Scotland as well. So it's all very close by for us, and I think that's what we really love. I think
Yeah, and it works quite well. We have such good relationships with everyone that we work with that our assembly team, Pete, who leads it, he'll be in at like 6 a.m. and just to get things over the line, get it done. And then I'm like, there's a van coming to pick it up at 2 p.m. It needs to be ready. And I've given him like not even a day sometimes. And he's like, And, obviously that is not how we want to be operating by all means, but there are times that things happen,
Yeah, it's the
that
reality
you
of it.
need to just work around the clock. And even with some of our other suppliers, they're sort of putting in the time, and because they are so close, it's like, right, I'm going to send a courier and it's coming to collect in the next couple of hours, and then it's with us on site,
Yeah.
in a few hours. Whereas if we were doing things where we were working with suppliers that were out of the UK, that just would never
Yeah.
be feasible.
It's a team effort.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Let's talk a bit about the design, the lights and the inspiration for them, because you definitely have like, sounds so basic, say like a look for them. But they all, when you got the four ranges,
Yeah.
is that right? And it's all inspired by nature and chemical reactions.
Mhm.
I read the Born to Nature
Yes.
article that you
Oh,
guys
amazing.
wrote.
Good.
It's like felt like it was like a mindfulness
Yes.
piece,
Yeah.
but which I thought was actually very calming and
Maybe that came from COVID. I don't know. But basically, I do a lot of meditation. So part of that practice is, which some people may know, is like noticing your breath, noticing your surroundings. And I really love the idea of being present and how that makes you feel on an emotional level. So I really wanted to try and incorporate that into my creative work. So when we look at like the narratives, it might be that I'll take an example for the Marleybone project that we did in the entrance lobby, which was Oceans and Rivers. And then it was basically looking at the undulation of oceans and rivers, so water running, and trying to deconstruct that in an abstract way, reconstruct it, and then produce our sculptures. So it'll be taking elements like the sunlight projecting onto the surface to create that kind of glistening effect. You've got that obviously like the waves as well, the undulations, the colour as well. So you maybe not in the UK, but in other waters, you might have that kind of teal lagoon colour. So we kind of took that element as well. And if you look closely at those glass elements, you'll see that the lagoon colour is mixed with a clear. So you've got this really nice kind of swirly effect in it.
Yeah.
And then we worked with our glass blower to be able to create clear glass and then imprint texture on it, which means that when the light projects onto it, it will basically refract and sparkle as it would with
Surface
water.
of the sea,
Yeah.
or the river.
So there's little things like that where we try and incorporate it. But I think what's nice is if you walked into that apartment, you may not necessarily know what the story is behind it. So I really like that kind of secrecy to it.
yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things that we do a lot with our designs is when we focus, for example, we have a collection called chitinous, which is inspired by butterfly wings.
Chitinous, isn't it the outer shell of a
Yeah,
of
the
a
like protein structure, basically chitin. So we kind of did
Yeah.
a little spin off of that.
We
Great.
did.
Great.
No one knows how to pronounce
No.
it though.
I thought it was chinnitus or something.
Yeah.
We've had that a few times. But when we looked at chitinous, and even with like storm and fracture and movement of matter, we don't necessarily want to like pick an element of nature and then do sort of like a literal interpretation of it, because you do have a lot of that in the market already. You'll have,
Like hanging maple leaves.
precisely. You see that all the time.
Yeah.
And it's you think that they've just taken a maple leaf to the factory and photocopied it.
Yeah.
But when we look at the elements, we're sort of because of the process of sort of noticing, observing, taking that in, and then deconstructing to construct again. It gives us an opportunity to pick a detail of that element that we want to focus on. And so chitinous is actually focused on the veining of the butterfly wing. So we've kind of looked at the veining, the pattern, taken that. Alison has done some really great things with it in terms of getting it photo etched into like a little brass thin sheet. And we've taken the veining of it and then encapsulated it in an acrylic form. The actual form of the shape itself is quite abstract. You wouldn't really know if it's a pebble or if it's a wing or what it is. And so that allows us to kind of create elements that are inspired by nature, but that are not an literal interpretation of it. So it gives kind of room to your mind to sort of picture what you want it to be, or in essence, create a story behind it. that also has a really nice story to it, that if you are working with a client who is for their home, or they want to create a feature where it's the key centerpiece and the focus of everything, then you do have a nice story to go
Mm.
behind it, rather than just walking in and be like, oh, look, maple leaves again hanging. Um, not that I have anything wrong with maple leaves, but and the way that we work is, when we've developed a new technique, that same technique can be used in different concepts. So we had a client who took the chitinous swing and said, I really like what you've done here with the photo etched brass detail and encapsulating it, but I don't want it to be a butterfly veining. I want it to be something else. And so they've then gone and picked a leaf that they like, and we focused on the veining of that leaf and did the same sort of process.
Okay.
So it's quite an interesting process for some people.
I think what's nice about our collections is that it shows the principles of the processes that we work with. So acrylic casting in these kind of shapes, and then the photo etching one, which was actually obviously casted for chitinous, like inside the acrylic, but then we've also used it for another collection, which is called Movement of Matter, which is a glass petal. And then I did some illustrations of some jasmines and sweet peas, and I got them etched in 0.4 millimeter brass, and they kind of sit delicately on top. So again, it's using the same principle. And I'm hoping, or like we're hoping, that like Monica said with this inquiry, that someone might see our collection but have an idea that they want to do something with it. So it's kind of like, I don't know, a nice progression of all the processes that we can use.
Letting them have something that is unique to them,
Yeah.
Yeah.
based off your.
And we have had it, the movement of matter, when we launched it, it was obviously so small and delicate. We've just recently finished the Marylebone apartment, where they took the movement of matter um, petal, and in essence, we've like made it much larger, and it's now sort of a pendant instead of like individual components suspended. So it works.
It definitely does.
Yeah.
So obviously, Rock and Soar are at the serious luxury end
Mm.
of the market. What does, or how do you define luxury in today's world?
It's a difficult one. So, one of the things that I think I wanted to start this business because of challenging the perception of luxury. And what I mean by that is, people perceive luxury as raw materials, new materials, it's never been made before, and that's what they love. But obviously, there's a massive growing concern about sustainability and environmental impact. So, being able to source new and raw materials doesn't really match up with what people perceive as luxury. And it's the same as, say, looking at recycling materials and the perception of recycling, which I think a lot of people don't perceive as luxury because obviously it's been used before. So, I'd like to know if there's some sort of way that we can incorporate recycled materials and have that perception of luxury, so that it means that we're also environmentally conscious. We obviously we do our bit in terms of like lowering our carbon footprint and um, having like locally sourced suppliers and all that kind of stuff. But it's the recycled materials element that I think that I really want to kind of hone in on.
I think ultimately, a lot of it is having, if your clients are able to go on that journey with you, to
Yeah.
really appreciate the fact they're getting something that is completely unique, but
Yeah.
also has a
Yeah.
conscience.
I think it does. It very much does depend on the project and the client. Some concepts from the get go are very much focused on like sustainability aspect, and some not so much. But we have had inquiries in the past where we put forward two options: one where it's made purely out of new material, and other where we're sort of said, oh, actually, we know of um, a recycled acrylic that we could use if you guys want to explore that. A few years back, we also worked on a project where a client actually, and it's been happening more, well, actually, we just did another one. It's been happening more and more where the end client has an old family chandelier or something that has been laying around for a substantial amount of years, and it needs, it works, but it needs maybe a touch up. And so we'll either use the glass to then
Should
sort
we
of,
purpose it?
yeah,
Yeah.
to repurpose it and recreate something new. We had recently an installation where actually it was sort of like these fabric weaved strings that had these very small seashells from South Africa sewn onto it. And then it was kind of like completed with loads of lovely glass elements and light. And not only did we look at repurposing the glass, but then we also had a look at the fabric and the shells. So there are stuff like this that we can still do, and there's more and more of it happening.
Mm.
But it does very much depend on the end client.
Sure.
If they have an appreciation for the thing
Mm.
that they have or for the thing that they're creating, which I think it's probably why not only do we struggle to push it out more, but then also interior designers, because I do think they try.
Sure.
Yeah.
I do think
I'm
they
sure
try.
they do.
Yeah.
We're kind of looking at the moment at different processes. So Monica obviously said about recycled acrylic, and you can basically melt that down and recast it, but it can have imperfections in it. So it's not optically clear. There might be some kind of like dusts and stuff in there. So it's like people won't necessarily want that. However, there is other ways that we can kind of look at it to make it more environmentally friendly. And one of those processes is called overrun. So it's basically in the workshop, they'll be doing lots of jobs with the clear acrylic, and sometimes they pour too much and then they have to solidify it and put it into landfill. So what we can say with our projects is that any projects that are going on at the time, if they've like poured too much for their project and it comes into ours, so that there's no waste for landfill. So there's little elements like that that we try and like discuss with our suppliers. Another thing is the glass blowers. The ones that we work with, they can recycle their clear glass, but they can't do it with their color. So basically they can, if they use it and then they're creating like a clear glass ornament, and then that can go back into the furnace and be remelted. I think that might be okay in terms of any imperfections because of the temperature that it goes at. But yeah, so there's lots of different kind of ways that we try and like push in terms of like lowering energy consumption and material wastage and stuff like
Great.
that.
Great.
It's an ongoing process.
Everyone just needs to do their bit.
Yeah.
Let's talk projects. Favorite project?
Favorite project completed so far,
Mm,
or in
could
the
be in process.
pipeline?
Could be in process. Could be.
I think there's one that I'm very excited about that isn't anywhere near ready, but will be really fun if we do get it over the line. I'm thinking Dubai.
Oh yeah.
Up until now, that has been completed. Funny enough, the Marylebone project, one of the things, the very first apartment that we did, one of the things that was great about it is when we designed two features for them. One of the features when we were designing it, we weren't really a fan personally. And then when it got installed, I think the technique that we used on the glass just blew everyone away. And that was something quite, I would say, that I carried with me, because the technique that we used in that glass has now been reused over and over and over again.
Cool.
And it's really, I think, really what we first thought was awful and we didn't think we were going to enjoy has turned out to be a really pleasant surprise.
That pendant was painful because it was the first time we basically, the framework that we created was using a process called 3D tube bending for aluminium. And there's only like 2 manufacturers in the UK who are able to make this, and we'd never been able to do it before. And basically what happens is it's like a machine that has ball bearings on it, and the aluminium tube comes out like spaghetti, so it can go in all different kind of shapes, and that's how we got that really nice dynamic
Oh, right.
framework.
Okay.
But it was the first time that we used it, and that was really difficult working back and forth with that supplier. But we got there in the end, and it looks amazing.
It does
so
look amazing.
Yeah, and there's only, from what I understand, 2 suppliers in the entirety of the UK that does that.
yeah,
So we really didn't have much option. It was sort of like really just these two.
yeah.
There's also a really exciting project that we've completed ages ago that we're still waiting on photography, and that is in Miami. It's from one of our collections. And the reason it's super exciting is because it's Pablo Escobar's ex-home.
All right.
So that would be great once we are able to show that.
Whose home is it now?
We're not 100% sure.
So it's in a private home.
It's a private home.
Okay. No
Yeah.
hippos walking around or anything.
I think it was just the concept behind it was really fun for us to be like, oh, this home used to be, and we did a little bit of digging and to see once it was sold, like what were the complications, because you can just imagine what you'd find in a property like that.
I can imagine. Who is that? Is then your customer for that one was a designer?
That was with a UK designer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who was working on this project with an end client in Miami.
Amazing.
That was our first project in the US, which was like a good achievement for us. I think my favorite project probably has to be, well, so that basically was chitinous that was installed or being installed, but we've actually completed one, and it was like the first time I got to see our collections in the flesh, and it was quite a large scale one for us as well, wasn't it? It was like a entrance lobby, double height space.
The one in Bank.
No.
You're
This
thinking...
one was, where was it? North London? I don't know.
No, so that was we do a lot of cool homes.
No,
so
isn't it between Hertfordshire and Essex on the border or something?
that was actually David
know.
Beckham's ex-home.
Okay.
Yeah.
To a new client now. So yeah, that was quite interesting because it was sort of, up until this point, we've done a lot of bespoke projects where we've designed something completely different and new for a client. But these are our collections. So it's always quite nice when, because I think Alison went through this fear when we were designing and launching our collections. It's like, will people like it? Well, we like it, but will people like it? When we're designing something for them, it's very different.
Yeah.
When you're designing something that you love and that you've fallen in love with,
Very personal.
it's very personal. And then the first couple of times that we would launch a new collection and then send it out, I think she would hide underneath the table because she would sort of be like,
no, it's not ready. It's like, it is ready. No, something so much better than this.
And then she'd sort of pick at it, and then eventually I'd send it out and she'd be like, has anyone said anything?
Yeah.
Do people like it? Do they hate it? And it's a very personal process. And you do expose yourself to a point where you know you're going to get feedback. You know that someone might be like, well, that's awful.
I think that's why that's good in terms of having a business partner as well. There's a little bit of a detachment in terms of like people's feedback. She can soften the blow before it comes to me if there's anything wrong with it.
That hasn't been the case. No one has actually said anything awful about any of our collections. If anything, they're like, this is great. Can we have it larger?
Yeah.
And then you're like, yeah, here we go. But yeah, it's been fine.
So what's next? What's the next 5 years going to bring? What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? Rock and Soar.
Personally, for me, I definitely want to spend more time in the US.
Bigger is better.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of my business development mind.
Yeah. I do love a grand lobby over there.
Yeah, and I think there's a great market there to explore. And so I think in terms of a business perspective and growth, that would be great for us. I think in terms of internally and design, that depends on how much Alison wants to keep putting herself
Because you have
there.
objects as well you were talking about,
Yes.
which I'm guessing is like, accessories to go with the
exactly.
the sculptures.
They're basically standalone sculptures that would work in a kind of product range with the sculpture installation. So if you have the storm installation, glass objects hanging suspended in a lobby space. You might have a storm object ornament that sits alongside to complement it.
Sure.
That's the kind of vision anyway. So we've got quite a bit of work to do to get there.
Yeah, we almost envision that kind of range or that kind of product to like be more sort of like something that we can put in museums or galleries
Yeah.
and just to try and like, yeah, it's a very different side to the business that we haven't even had time to touch upon.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that we both agree on is we are very much a believer in sort of like organic growth, and we're kind of taking it slow with everything that we do. I think we've had a lot of business mentors and others who are sort of pushed us to maybe consider opening up the business to investors and
Mm-hmm.
other things of the sort. But we have so much control at the moment that of not just how the business is run, but also the creative side of things,
Yeah.
which is, I guess, one of the reasons we kind of started this in the first place.
Sure.
So we're trying not to lose that just yet.
So on that, what would you say has been the most rewarding aspect of RNS so far? Seeing your collection and
Yeah,
people receiving your collection?
I think so. I think the feedback from clients and obviously having a demand for the work that you do is always so lovely to hear. And then having it installed, having the feedback from their end client as well, and just generally when we work with interior designers, they come back to us and say, you were on it, you were there at 10 p.m. at night with us. And not everybody does that. And we absolutely love that about you guys. So I think that's really rewarding, I think.
Yeah, I think it's personally it's knowing that it's not been easy, and it's far from, for it not to be easy. There's always going to be hard times and good times, but even in the hard times, we're still here, we're still standing. It's definitely put us to test us in our personal capacities.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the penny dropped for us when we first sort of like started networking and getting ourselves out there and socializing with other people of the industry, and people would come up to us and we had no idea who they were, and they knew our work and they'd been following us, and they were sort of congratulating
That's
us, and
amazing.
we've sort of like definitely the penny dropped there, because we was like, we haven't even, like, for us, we're always like, we're not doing enough, we haven't reached where we want to be yet. And for people to congratulate us where we're just starting, that is definitely a moment. It's a funny moment, because it's definitely nice, and at the same time the imposter syndrome kicks in, where you're like, why are they congratulating me? What did I do? I haven't done anything yet. But it's that whole experience is definitely I don't think I would exchange it for anything else.
It was the same when I went up to Nottingham Trent University to do some mentoring up there, and they were like, "Oh, what was your company?" I'm Rock Soar. Oh yeah, I follow them, and I'm like, "What? What?" That's surreal to know that like students and stuff are starting to recognize who we are and our work and stuff. So it's good.
Should be
It's nice.
proud.
Yeah.
So if you could give one piece of advice to aspiring entrepreneurs, perhaps particularly women,
Yeah.
what would it be?
I mean, obviously everyone says just do it. It is more than like, it is just do it, but it is also understanding your capacities. I'm not saying in a sense of like, oh, if you can't do it, don't do it. No, but there will be so much of starting a business that will also affect you on a personal level, and know when you need to ask for help. So definitely, there's nothing to it. You literally just need to do it. Um, but there's a necessary amount of support, both in the professional side, also in the personal side, to be able to carry you through these hard times, because there will be hard times. And then also celebrate when when you have achieved, or when you've kind of sort of crossed something off your list and you're like, okay, I'm one step closer. Because I think that's something that we struggle a lot, is to celebrate. And without the celebration of the good moments, those hard times are going to feel harder than ever. And sometimes it's not, you know.
Sure.
Yeah.
But you're in it, you're living it. It's affecting you both personally and professionally. So definitely do it. Get yourself the right support that you need in both sectors of things.
And you'd recommend Princess Trust to
I
anybody
did
out there?
definitely recommend Princess
Yeah.
Trust, like, and just a business mentor.
Yeah.
Like our business mentor has been great to remind us, like, you are doing so much, you've done so well. You hear it from like your friends and your family, but you're just almost like,
Yeah.
well, you're just saying that because you love me. But when you do, kind of socialize with someone of the industry or someone who's also that you look up to, and they're sort of guiding you and reminding you of these things, it is great.
Yeah, I think to add to that is definitely speaking to as many people as possible in your industry, asking them. Like, we've had a few people who want to start their own businesses who are women, and they've just like, how you do it? Like, what do I need to do? And we've given advice. And I think that kind of relationship is really worthwhile, making all those connections, because it kind of pushes you up a level as well. It's
Yeah.
like, actually, I can do this. If they can do it, I think that's really important.
And I mean, there's a lot that I don't think people discuss, which is like the financial struggles that you will go through,
Mm.
not just as a business, but on a personal level. And I mean, for us, because we pretty much funded everything ourselves, and obviously then getting a loan, etc.
Yeah, you're bootstrapped.
Yeah, there is a lot of responsibility on you now, and I think those conversations should probably be had more. Because I think everyone's always a little bit shy to say,
And
that.
seeing what's on Instagram
Yeah, and everyone sees how busy we are or whatever, or your friends see like all this marketing material that you're putting out, and they're like, "Guys, you're really doing it." And it's like, yeah, but there is also and another level to it that not everyone knows about, and which I think is why support in those
Cash flow.
times, yeah, is so important to have.
Mm.
And I think those conversations maybe could be had more. We've actually built really nice relationships with a lot of people. We recently, maybe a couple of months ago, I picked up the phone to one of my suppliers who's had a company for about 15 years now. And I know they're relatively small. Their setup is similar to us. And I just said, how did you do it at the beginning? Because, like, I'm now questioning myself, like,
Mm.
is this the right approach?
A lot of people were just like, just keep going.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter, just keep going
going.
through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everyone's just like, you're just in your head right now. You're in your feelings. It's absolutely fine. We had a situation like this similar in 2008 and so on. And it is just having those open conversations so that you don't think that you're doing a shit job at it, because you're probably not.
End on that.
Mhm.
Ladies, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This show is brought to you in partnership with the Better Home Company. The Better Home Company provides exceptional construction and aftercare for luxury projects across the UK and EU.